I'd like to call the village board meeting for Tuesday, October 22nd, 2024 to order. Roll call, please.
President Kardowski.
Here.
Trustee Surveys.
Here.
Trustee Paul.
Here.
Trustee Zerval.
Here.
Trustee Atkinson.
Here.
Trustee Krieger is excused. Trustee Flukie.
Here. Okay, please stand for the pledge.
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And please remember our men and women throughout the world in uniform. I have no changes to the agenda. I need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by trustee Atkinson, second by trustee Flukie to approve the agenda as a, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carried. Number 5, action on the minutes of the open and closed session from September 24th, 2024, and the open minutes from the special meeting on October 8th, 2024.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by trustee Atkinson, seconded by trustee Flukie to approve those minutes as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carried. Number 6, comments from the public must be limited to items not on the agenda. You must state your name and address. You are limited to 5 minutes. The board's role is to listen and not discuss the item. Personnel issues cannot be discussed nor individuals named, and the board is not able to take action at this meeting. Is there any members from the public that would like to speak on items not on the agenda? Come on up. State your name and address, please, for the record.
Good afternoon. My name is Jim Rafter. The address is 411 West Briar Lane, Green Bay / Alloway, Wisconsin. Good afternoon. I'm here to introduce myself to some of those who don't know me. I've been on the Alloway Village Board for 10 years, and I currently serve as the village president. I've done that for the last 8 years. And now I am running for the Wisconsin State Senate to represent the new District 30, which is Green Bay, Alloway, Ashwaubenon, De Pere, Bellevue, a slice of Ledgeview, and a slice of Rockland. And I'm just here to thank you for what you do and to let you know that a great part of why I am running is to represent the local municipalities. As you know, we get many unfunded mandates pushed down to us at a local level, and it's getting more and more difficult to do our jobs at a local level with the limited funds that we have. So I'm running to represent the people of the greater Green Bay area and bring home what we need out of Madison, and to treat people with respect. Try and put respect back in politics. So that's why I'm here. I just wanted to thank you for what you do and introduce myself to you, and have a great day.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, we do have another item for the comments from the public, a letter we received that Joel will read into the record.
Yeah, I put a hard copy of this letter at the dais for each of the trustees. This item was presented to village staff last Friday on 10/18. It comes by way of Teresa Rossick and Chuck Gertz. They currently reside at 2982 South Ridge Road. They'd asked that this particular letter be read for public comment period for the record at the village board meeting today on October 22nd. The letter reads, "Ever since birth, I have had severe reactions to fragrances and chemicals. Right after coming home from the hospital, I was at the doctor's office due to severe reaction to the clothes washed in detergent with fragrance, wheezing, along with full body hives. I just learned to live with this. However, about 2 years ago, I noticed multiple chemical sensitivity reactions to VOCs getting more frequent. Could these reactions really be caused by the fragrance in the air? I thought to myself. Forward to March 2024, the fragrance on our morning walk was intolerable. Wheezing, struggling to breathe, instant migraine, and a running nose with itchy eyes to the point of swelling shut by the time I made it home. Later that week, I found out I was not the only person this was affecting in such a violent manner. Our neighborhood started conversing about this intense fragrance and ended up reaching out to the Village of Ashwaubenon representative, Will Engels. In a nutshell, we found out that the fragrance our communities are being exposed to contains 3 cancer chemicals, which we had been assured were safe through the self-policing of the offending company. Besides our lives being dictated by this fragrance, the residents adjacent to the Ashwaubenon Industrial Park have also been dealing with escalated noise and vibration and light pollution problems. Some nights, the noise from the high-speed vacuum motors without proper mufflers has led us to sleep with active noise-canceling headsets on. In the past, the village of Ashwaubenon has mitigated many of these same issues on a case-by-case basis. NPS, Tufco, Green Bay Converting, Alstrom, Lakeland College, Green Bay Radiology, Castle, to name only a few. Currently, the use of new higher speed equipment, advanced LED lighting, and strong fragrances, plastic lamination processes in the Ashwaubenon Industrial Park have exacerbated all of these issues. Enforcement through our current nearly 20-year-old ordinances has been impossible. Note, primary research for both noise and lighting ordinances performed by the author, Teresa Rosick, MSEM, PM. Our industrial park is not the same as when our ordinances were written. Technology has changed and industrial production practices have changed, including the shift from one-shift operations to 24/7 operations. Similar to updating village equipment, our neighborhood urgently requests a review, updating of our obsolete ordinances. This action, we believe, would lead to ensuring a fair balance between business needs and the health welfare of our residential communities. Notably, noise measurement standards significantly different between residential and industrial neighbors. With residential areas often facing instantaneous and greater accountability, moreover, our residential neighborhoods have been led to believe there currently is no ordinance for enforcement or regulation for smell abatement and has to rely on outside governmental entities to no avail. The strong fragrance smell has now permeated as far as De Pere, Ashwaubenon Park, and Nativity Church neighborhood, Hy-Vee areas nearly daily, and especially from 4:30 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. Mitigating on a case-by-case basis has consistently required extra resources and funding. Besides taking nearly a year to investigate, now our residents and the surrounding communities are continually being subjected daily and nightly to both noise and fragrance odor trespassing onto our yards and into our homes. While exposure to fragrance sounds relatively harmless, it is important to note the MSDS material safety data sheets confirms 3 cancer-causing chemicals that are also known to be hormone endocrine disruptors. Additionally, self-policing by the offending company has tried to lead the residents to believe the levels are harmless. However, the fragrance stemming from the second and third shifts is pungent to the point of instant headaches, wheezing, and increased asthma attacks throughout Ashwaubenon, say otherwise. History has imparted on a regular basis residents adjacent to industrial areas subject to self-policing is biased and government intervention is a necessity. Note, WHO, World Health Organization, and Harvard Review. Given that Ashwaubenon encompasses both residential and industrial zones, updating the ordinances to include usage of industrial exhaust scrubbers, industrial high vacuum motor mufflers, and impartial CEMS continuous emissions monitoring units, to name a few mitigating tools, we believe crucial to address these concerns. Moreover, incorporating other emerging technologies like EMF, 5G monitoring, delivery drones, etc., will help ensure these updated ordinances include after-hours reporting protocols to serve to be valid, proactive for another 20 years. Note the City of Denver Sensible EDP. Updating our ordinances will not only benefit the health and well-being of a residential community, but also support our industrial partners, many who already have taken the additional steps and expense necessary to be good neighbors. By transforming these regulations, we can reduce the need for time-consuming village intercession, ultimately saving taxpayer money for the long term. Please understand these ongoing issues have profoundly impacted our lives on a 24/7 basis and further highlight the necessity for updated regulations with immediate accountability. Given Ashwaubenon's balanced mix of residential and industrial areas, it is crucial our ordinances reflect this harmony and incorporate responsible usage of cutting-edge technologies for the betterment of all. What specific changes can we propose for new ordinances, and how can residents be more involved in this process? Sincerely, Teresa Rosick and Chuck Gertz.
Okay, thank you, Joel. Okay, does anybody else have any comments that are on items that are not on today's agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. Number 7, written communications and/or announcements. 7A, presentation update on the Ashwaubenon Performing Arts Center by Kate Williams of the Ashwaubenon School District. Thank you, Kate. Could you state your name and address for the record, please?
Sure. It's Kate Williams. I'm at 2720 Otto Court here in the village. And thank you for the opportunity to present to all of you.
Thank you for coming.
In advance of this meeting, I had shared the income statement from the last season, as well as the balance sheet. It was a comparative analysis looking at the last 5 years at the PAC. I won't read it back to you, but I will share a couple of notes. These notes were included as well with that submission to you, but just to note that the line item for general sponsorship receipts are funds not allocated to a specific project or event. So those are not allocated elsewhere in this income statement. The rental income line reflects non-performance rentals. So when it's low or at zero, that simply means that we did not receive rental income from non-performance related usages. Most of our usages are performance related. The performance revenues line item includes rental income and programming sponsorships, which make up 41% and 12% of that total respectively. And then the fund balance at the very bottom of the sheet is important to note that we've been able to grow that. That's important as the venue and its equipment continues to age. Some of it's failing and some becomes outdated, as such happens with a venue or building of any kind. So we are making plans on doing some updates, replacing some things, and repairing some things as things fail. So were there any questions related to that income statement? Great, thanks. I wanted to share that, the Performing Arts Center has become home to several established community and regional music, theater, and dance organizations. The PAC continues to serve the Ashwaubenon School District, primarily for music, choir, and theater rehearsals and productions. And the 2024-25 Performing Arts season was announced in August, with brochures mailed to all Ashwaubenon residents and past PAC customers. We continue to experience the generosity of our area residents and businesses in supporting these programming efforts. And new this year, negotiations with each show were made so that nearly all events in the Performing Arts season offer discounted $10 rush tickets for Ashwaubenon and area students. And if you don't already have a brochure, I have some in my car. Over 47,000 people came through the Performing Arts Center last year. That's an increase of 3% over last year. 68% of the time in the PAC is used by the Ashwaubenon School District, meaning that 32% of the usages in the PAC represent 100% of the earned revenues that come into that space. The Ashwaubenon Performing Arts Center is in high demand. We typically turn away 50 to 60 usage requests each year due to lack of data availability. It's a good problem to have, but unfortunately we can't support everybody, but we do the best we can. With the venue's growing usage and attendance, we also experience a growing demand for parking near the venue. Anyone who's attended an event knows that the venue's main parking lot of approximately 150 stalls fills quickly for a venue that holds 750. Patrons make great use of the street parking surrounding the venue, occupying both sides of South Ridge Road, Sandra Lane, and Willard and Anderson Drives. Our request was recently made by a resident to add a crosswalk to some of these surrounding cross intersections where they meet the PAC grounds, most especially at Sandra Lane and South Ridge Road. That was more of a recent location that has come up a couple of times, so wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. The PAC's main parking lot, which is shared by the community pool, again contains approximately 150 stalls. With the PAC holding 750 people, parking becomes problematic if both the pool and the PAC hold events on the same day. In fact, we're now at a level of activity where the PAC is unable to host an event if the pool is host to a swim meet of any kind, resulting in events and rentals being turned away. But we are working on some signage that I think is going to help direct visitors to the campus in general, and I think that's something that'll probably come up in discussion at a later time too. And then related to one last point I wanted to share was that the venue is considering going cashless for ticket sales in calendar year 2025. Barely 1% of our ticket sales each year are made via cash or check. So it's a continued decline, and we're really getting to the point of not sure we need the cash option. The reason for the change would be to reduce staffing costs. Whenever you have large sales at an event, we need to have additional box office staff, so we never have one person in the box office dealing with cash. So, and that's my summary of PAC activities. Were there any questions?
One of my question, I mean, this is a great fund balance that you have here, Kate, you know,
Sure.
almost $500,000. Who is the group that decides how that gets spent or used or dispersed?
Sure. Currently, that discussion occurs with the Ashwaubenon School District leadership. So that would be the superintendent and assistant superintendent, and myself. We'll talk about what the needs are. I think with it being, well, we're not brand new as a business. We are still new as far as the school district is concerned and knowing how best to spend and save those funds. I think that there is a determination that is continually under discussion of what is a good cushion to have in that account. I certainly hope we never go through another pandemic again, but that's a significant decrease hit to the budget if something like that were to happen. Any venue, any business needs to have some sort of cushion. And so we want to keep a good amount in there, but obviously reinvest in the venue so that it supports our students and our community.
So if you were to say buy a new projector,
Yeah.
let's just say it's $40,000,
Yeah.
that would come out of this $495,000.
That would,
Okay.
yes. Thank you.
Kate, along those lines, my understanding is there's a PAC board that Kelly is appointed to. Do you know anything about that? Have they ever met? And would they be involved in some of the things that Mary just mentioned with that fund balance? And who's on that board?
Sure, we would get that board. That board has not actively met since the pandemic. We have emailed with the chairperson of the board, but not met as a full group. And so Kelly has not been at those meetings, and that is no fault of hers. And so yes, the answer would be that community advisory group would absolutely help in assisting in determining where some of these expenditures would happen. A lot of the need is going to be researched and come from our technical staff, who has the expertise related to especially electronic equipment, soundboard, light boards, lights, and the things that get dated and need repair and replacement.
So do you plan to meet again anytime
Yes.
soon or have regular meetings or?
We do. The intention is to meet twice a year, and I'm not sure we're going to get a meeting in yet this calendar year, but we would resume again in 2025.
Okay.
Thank you.
There you go, Cal. One other question. You recently added a new staff member. Can you just tell us a little bit about, is it Steve? Is that the new gentleman?
No, we had Steve and we've added Paul.
Oh, Paul, okay.
So Paul Seymour is a new hire for the Ashwaubenon PAC. He is an associate technical director. When we have the number of events coming through the building that we are having, it's difficult for one person to provide all the services needed for every event coming through. In fact, our light booth and our sound area are in two different locations, so one person physically can't do both at the same time. So the investment was made to add a second technical staff person who will be supportive of both the school district needs as well as the community rentals and the performing arts season needs. So it's a wonderful addition, and I want to thank the village board and the school district for supporting that addition to the staff. So thank you.
Kate, just curious that, getting back to the fund balance,
Yes.
are there guidelines you have to follow what that money cannot be used and more importantly, not be used for?
Sure. The fund balance funds have to be used for the Ashwaubenon Performing Arts Center, which I think is an important distinction because it is held within the school district budget. It is not intended to be, my understanding from the school district, is not intended to be used for major maintenance projects such as a new roof or any structural needs related to the facility. It would be to go towards improving equipment, purchasing additional equipment, and it's there should there be a financial loss in any given year, which, knock on wood, we have not experienced except for the pandemic year.
Okay. And then just out of curiosity too, in 20, and this might have been asked in the past.
Sure.
21, 22, he had a huge increase in total performance revenue, just a big spike. Then in the last 2 years, came back down to above normal, probably what you
Yeah.
experienced before. What was that from?
It's a good question. That was the year that we brought in Bill Engvall for 2 performances.
The what?
We brought in Bill Engvall for 2
Oh,
performances.
yeah.
And his artist fee was
Yeah.
higher than most, and the revenues to offset that were then higher
Okay.
than most. So it was a one-off year.
Yeah, okay.
Good question.
So I have to ask my question I always ask. So when we bring Rod Stewart in, his fees are going to be higher, but he's going to command more
Right,
for tickets,
exactly.
right?
You know, that's how the formula works. I'll get on that.
I asked a younger member of our staff one time. She didn't know who Rod Stewart was. She said, "Is he someone with the Packers?" I said, no.
He could be.
Anyway, that's my standing joke is getting Rod Stewart. So.
We did have a gentleman who, we had a tribute to Neil Diamond and Frank Sinatra. And we had a patron who, God bless him, he wanted to meet Frank Sinatra and get his autograph after the show. And we had to share that Frank passed away in 98, so.
Just a little while ago.
Just a little while ago, but no, we have such wonderful patrons. I love working with everybody who comes through.
Yeah. I live right across the street from the PAC, so yes, it is very active, and that's great. That's what we want.
It's
That's what we built it for.
I'm so glad you built it. Like I
Yeah.
said, the last time I presented, you could have built 2, I think, at this
Yeah.
point, and
Yeah.
the community would have embraced them, so thank you.
Yeah.
Well thought out.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions? Otherwise, we can release Kate.
Just wanted to say thank you. You do a great job, and we definitely appreciate it.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you, Kate. Okay, 7B, consider and discuss 2024 Halloween trick-or-treat hours. They are October 31st from 4 to 7, I believe. Does anybody have any issues with that? Or we'll just announce that they're October 31st from 4 to 7, right?
That is what we have traditionally done for many, many years.
Yes, yes. Okay. Now, 8, action on consent agenda. 8A, consider, discuss, act on a Class A beer, Class A liquor license request for SPX GB Hospitality LLC, DBA Spark by Hilton Green Bay. 8B, consider, discuss, act on the distribution of state-required housing fee and housing affordability reports. C, receive, accept investment report. D, receive, accept September financial statements. E, receive, accept budgeted expenditures. F, receive, accept October 2024 Public Works Department report. Yes, Joel?
If I could ask the board to withhold 8A and take that item separately. We got information on that just shortly before the board went into session this morning.
What was it?
If you could hold 8A from your action and
8A,
then take
all
that item up separately, staff would ask the board to do that.
All right, I'll move to approve with the exception of 8A.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda with the exception of 8A. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Joel?
Thank you, Madam President. So this particular action is for a Class A beer, Class A liquor license for the Spark by Hilton Hotel. This had been formerly the Hampton Inn on Ramada Way. And essentially, this item did go through Public Works and Protection, and there was ultimately a recommendation for denial. And that recommendation for denial was based on the fact that they had not yet satisfied their room tax commitments for operating the hotel. As of this morning, the operators, SPX GB Hospitality LLC, doing business as Spark by Hilton Green Bay, has satisfied those requirements and have made payment for the room tax component. So at this point, they would be recommended for approval on the Class A beer, Class A liquor license.
So everything's according to the rules and ordinances of having that.
Correct. They were just delinquent on their room tax and hadn't satisfied the room tax
Correct.
component prior to Public Works and Protection, and again, as of this morning, they have satisfied that requirement.
Okay, I'll move to approve item A on the action item 8.
Second.
I just had a question on that. I was gonna ask to have this pulled. Out of curiosity, they have a bar and restaurant there, so they have a liquor license, correct? And how are they able to maintain that if they were behind on their room tax?
So if they have an existing license and essentially they were delinquent on making a tax payment or some type of utility charge, ultimately what would have to happen is you'd have to either go through a revocation process to remove the license that had been granted, or go through a non-renewal process at the time of application renewal. So that's usually once a year in June, July, you would do that non-renewal. So they were granted a license, they were compliant with the license at the time of application. You would have to formally go through a process under statutory law to remove that license or suspend it.
So then, when they applied for renewal, which they all do every year, they were current on their, must have been current on
my
their
understanding that they
taxes.
were
Okay,
current at that time.
okay.
Okay, so we have a motion by trustee Paul, a second by trustee Service to accept item 8A on the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Number 9, public hearing on ordinance number 010-2-24, amending the definition of medical treatment facility. Is there anybody here who would like to speak for or against this? Patrick, did you want to say anything
Sure.
about this?
This is going to relate to the action item on the actual ordinance. So recently, staff and I we kind of went through chapter 17, looking through some updates, and this is a particular ordinance that we felt that we could present to the board to try to make some updates to the actual definition of the medical treatment facility. Why it's in the public hearing is because it's chapter 17. Any zoning ordinance that's being amended needs to go through a public hearing process. Essentially, this medical treatment facility is defined currently as, where it includes rehabilitation clinics for drug and alcohol treatment for only inpatient. We believe that the actual intent behind the definition should include outpatient as well. So inpatient and outpatient. Right now, it just includes inpatient. I think that a more suitable, common sense approach is to have an inpatient and outpatient definition of the ordinance. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, we can certainly take it on the action items.
Okay, so this is a public hearing. Does anybody want to speak for or against this item? Does anybody want to speak for or against this item? Hearing none, I need a motion to close the hearing.
Motion to close?
Second.
Motion by Atkinson, second by Flukie to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number 10, action items. A, consider, discuss, act on ordinance number 010-2-24, amending the definition of medical treatment facility. Are there any questions? Would like to ask Mr. Legal about?
Sure. I just would like to also clarify something. In the actual definition itself, I don't know how this happened, but there's a typo where you see the insertion of inpatient or patient. As it reads right now in your packet, it says inpatient or patient. It should say outpatient. It was appropriately entered when it was submitted to the Plan Commission. I don't know when the new version was created and uploaded. It probably on my error, but it should read inpatient or outpatient. The corrections have been made and given to the clerk's office if this is to be approved. But again, the ordinance is essentially just redefining the definition to include inpatient and outpatient care at drug and alcohol treatment facilities.
I'll make a motion to approve as presented with addition of outpatient.
Second.
We have a motion by trustee Atkinson, second by trustee Flukie to approve with the insertion of the outpatient facility. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 10B, consider, discuss, act on appeal of denied operator's license, Jennifer Harrington.
I can hop on this one. Ms. Harrington applied for an operator's license and was denied based on a failure to denied based on a failure to list all convictions on her record. The appeal went through the Public Works and Protection Committee, resulting in a tie vote. Hence, that's why she's here today. I believe Ms. Harrington is in the audience. Ms. Harrington, if you want to come, just take a seat right here. Looking through Ms. Harrington's record, I did want to update the board on a couple things. So according to our policy right now, it is kind of gray as to whether Ms. Harrington should be outright denied. There are a couple misdemeanors. So far, there are 2 convictions that I can see on her record, the misdemeanors dating back to 2007 and 2014. In 2002 and in 2012, she was charged with additional felonies, but those were what's called adjudicated or withheld. And why this wasn't presented at the committee is because there were Florida convictions, and I did a little Florida law research before coming in here today. So the adjudication withheld basically means that the district attorney's office charged Ms. Harrington, but based on her good behavior, she was never convicted or sentenced on them. So as of right on those 2 other additional charges, the felonies.
On the felonies.
On the felonies, correct. So there are basically 4 total charges, 2 resulting in convictions. Those 2 are misdemeanors. Looking at the felonies themselves, I dig a little further into them. They're pretty dated. One is 2002 and another one is 2012. You could argue that basically those specific circumstances may substantially relate to the licensing activity because they're for theft. I believe Ms. Harrington is a manager at a restaurant currently right now.
Yes, sir.
They are retail theft charges, those felonies. So according to our policy, any felony could result in a just automatic denial. That's it, if they substantially relate. But with these circumstances of the retail theft and a theft, or now her operating licensing activity at a restaurant, I'd be a little hard pressed to suggest that that may be substantially related to the actual licensing activity, just based on the actual charges versus what she's actually doing. That in addition to them being adjudicated, right? So she was not convicted. When you look into that, you can look at the history of it, the circumstances, the whats, whens, wheres. Based on the history, based on how long it's been since this adjudication has passed, and we were talking, 20, 12 years on some of them, I would recommend that Ms. Harrington be approved for this. I don't believe that it would be violation of she is in violation of our guideline, of our approved guideline for the operator's license, just based on the sole fact that they weren't ever convicted on her record. So the other 2 misdemeanors don't count against our guideline.
Right, and I was at the Public Works meeting, and wasn't the denial based on the fact that she didn't put them on the application, and so it was automatically denied, but she was told by an attorney
Right.
in Florida to not put it on because it didn't count.
I was informed in Atlanta, because originally I was living in Atlanta, by an attorney,
Okay.
Jason, and I said, I want to fill this form out correctly. What do I need to do? And he said, legally, and these are his words, that the search for a background in that particular kind of licensure could only be within 10 years. So I put exactly the 10-year mark and thought I was doing it correctly. There was no malintent. I wasn't trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. I just was following legal counsel.
And some policies in Wisconsin have a 10-year look-back period. We don't. Some just say any felony for any time, right? It's up to the board to approve at that point. We don't have a 10-year look-back period. Georgia law might be different from Wisconsin law. That's not the same in Wisconsin, so she is required to disclose all of them. Technically, she was correct, but leaving off those 2 felonies, but there was a misdemeanor she missed. So from an administrative function, staff had to automatically deny based on our policy. So that's why she's going through the process coming through today. But looking at our policy and the time it's been since these convictions and the misdemeanors aren't even applicable, I would recommend approval.
I'd have to agree. It's been 12 years and she was never convicted, or 12 years or longer. So with that being said, I would make a motion to approve the denial of her operator's license.
Second.
Just to add some clarification to that motion here.
Wait, you said,
So, yeah, the motion was to approve the denial, so you're gonna
I'm sorry, to
approve the
her
issuance of the
operator's
license.
Yep.
And uphold the appeal. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure for the record that we were clear.
Yeah, let's not do this
Semantics.
again.
Okay, Okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the license, to uphold the appeal. Does everybody understand?
I understand, but I got a question.
Okay.
Patrick, are there any felony charges that were legally and still against her yet?
There are not.
There are none.
There are none, no.
The only reason I keep asking this question, our safety department does a great job on checking into this, and we as a board turn around and approve something like this. But if there's nothing that are active, then I'm comfortable with it.
And they did do a pretty thorough search with it. I see notes from the Public Safety Department. Maybe the confusion was the adjudication language on there. In Wisconsin, it means a little bit different, but in Florida law, it means different.
okay.
So just looking up our definition versus Florida definition of what that is, she's technically not convicted of any felony, and there's nothing pending against her.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to grant the license for Jennifer Harrington. Everybody understand? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
10C, consider, discuss, act on a Class B beer. Somebody's got their mic and it's really loud. Consider, discuss, act on a Class B beer, Class B liquor license request for Merkel Green Bay LLC, DBA Picklr Green Bay.
I can.
Okay.
So Merco Green Bay LLC, doing business as Picklr Green Bay, is requesting approval of a Class B beer and a Class B liquor license for the address at 2610 Holmgren Way. I think this is the location of a former carpet store, if you're familiar with that location, next to, is it Burn Boot Camp, if I have my facts correctly. What they're looking to do is have a recreational facility with pickleball and things of that nature. And they're ultimately requesting, in their initial application, a full Class B license, so beer and liquor. This particular item did go before Public Works and Protection. The committee ultimately recommended the approval of a Class B beer and a Class C wine-only license. They did not approve or did not recommend approval for the Class B liquor, just given the nature that the amount of food service that's being provided as part of this operation is pretty limited, and generally speaking, the village has granted full licenses for restaurants. They do have some food items, but they'll be mainly kind of snack type options for the members and users of their particular facility. I believe John is on the line or on the virtual meeting, so if you have any questions from the applicant, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer those questions.
Okay, does anybody have any comments, questions?
I really don't have any questions for John. Knowing John does not have a full kitchen like the village normally has is the reason we gave him a beer and wine, so I'll make a motion to continue with the beer and wine as presented.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by trustee Paul, a second by trustee Atkinson to, I would have to say, grant the beer and wine license as opposed to the liquor license. Am I saying that correctly, Patrick?
Got it.
Okay. Okay, does everybody understand that? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. 10D, consider, discuss, act on contractual agreement between the Village of Ashwaubenon and Fair Market Assessments, Inc. for property assessment services for calendar year 2025. Joel?
Madam President, Village's contract with Fair Market Assessments is set to expire at the end of this calendar year. In your packet is the attached proposed contract. The contract is relatively similar to past years. We've been using Paul and Mike Diener for a number of years with the village for our assessment services. There are a few subtle changes that are coming forward in this next agreement. In the past, the village has provided a full-time assessment technician. At the retirement of our former technician in 2024, and with changes in state assessment law, in particular with personal property tax, it was agreed that there wasn't a need to provide a full-time assessment technician in our office to support fair market assessments. With that being said, there's a number of other administrative tasks that the assessment technician had been completing, but as a result of that succession, they have assumed, they meaning fair market assessments, have assumed much of the administrative tasks that go into preparing the assessment roll and managing the assessment program. And so there's an increase in the overall annual cost based on that idea that they're assuming some additional administrative responsibilities that had previously been done in-house. So the proposal for 2025 is a one-year contract for a total amount of $68,400. The reason and purpose of the one-year contract is, as Paul and Mike are kind of working through their communities, they want to identify what workload they are able to accommodate over the next year for personal reasons, and so they're asking for just a singular year contract extension that allows both fair market assessments and certainly the Village of Ashwaubenon in determining what that future path forward will be after the 2025 calendar year. Last thing I'll mention is that 2025 is marked as a maintenance year, so we were not planning on doing a market adjustment in 2025. However, 2026, if we were going to follow that model path that we had set forward a couple years ago, would be a market adjustment year. We do try to do market adjustments every 3 years. Based on our current assessment ratio, we will be due for that market adjustment because we will exceed that 10% deviation. I think actually we're already at that point, but we're gonna right at the cusp. So 2026 will mark that, and that'll be appropriate to review as part of a new contract anyway, then at that point. Paul is here to answer any questions that you may have of Paul and kind of the work that Fair Market does for the Village of Ashwaubenon. Otherwise, I will answer any questions you may have.
Paul, I would just like to say thank you and your dad, Mike, for all the years that you've done our assessments. I don't have a problem with this contract. I mean, I think it's definitely fair. So, anybody else has anything to add, say?
Have to agree.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
I have a motion by trustee Service, second by trustee Atkinson to approve the agreement between the Village of Ashwaubenon and Fair Market Assessments, Inc. for property assessment services for calendar year 2025 in the amount of $68,400. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Paul.
Comment, I too would like to thank Paul and his company. We ran into a few problems in the last assessment, and they really took care of the people that were in need of some answers, so thanks, Paul.
Okay, number 10E, consider, discuss, act on a planned unit development PUD extension request for PUD ordinance number 011-1-23 for 2213 to 2145 South Oneida Street, parcels VA-67-A-8, VA-67-A, VA-460-P-108, and VA-90-4-11 by Acts 1-8 Foundation. Aaron.
All right, thank you. As you probably remember, back in November 28th, 2023, I want to specify 2023, the staff report does say 2022. That was in 2023 when the village board approved the ordinance approving for a planned unit development for a proposed Cambria hotel on the subject properties. Since the approval, the Cambria, as proposed, has decided not to go forward. That said, the owner of the property, Acts 1-8 Foundation, has requested a one-year extension to the PUD as is allowable under our PUD ordinance. So under our PUD ordinance, if construction has not started within 1 year of the approval, the PUD actually is repealed and is null and void. So I did inform Acts 1-8 Foundation of that requirement, and they did meet the requirement of submitting a request within 30 days of the expiration prior to the approval. And they did submit the request. A copy of the extension is included in the packet. So then again, absent village board approval, the PUD will expire on November 28th, 2024. Since the agenda was prepared, we did receive a letter from Celindy Realty opposing the requested PUD extension, as well as a resident who lives at the Element Apartments. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, Jeff Van Beaver of X18 is in the audience, and a representative of Element Apartments is also in the audience.
Aaron, if we'd let this expire and they come back and want another PUD on a new project, is there another cost to that, meaning a permit cost?
There would be another $1,000 permit fee to review
$1,000?
and the timeline involved.
Okay, and a timeline, okay.
So my question to you, Aaron, is if this PUD expires, they have another fee that they would have to pay, but if they have to do an amendment, they also have a fee to pay, correct?
Correct. The amendment fee is $150, I believe it is.
Okay.
I guess Aaron or the owner, it looks like it's a totally different hotel group that would be stepping up for this project because Cambria has gone away, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
What new owner or what new hotel is it? Like, is it a luxury hotel like the Cambria was, or?
I probably defer to the ownership group to answer that. So Jeff, if you wouldn't mind going up to the front.
State your name and address for the record, please.
Jeff Van Beaver, 2145 South Oneida Street in Ashwaubenon. So the hotel is a choice hotel. It's the Ascend brand. It is the similar quality of the Cambria brand. So, and it would be a similar site plan, so there wouldn't be hardly any changes to the plan.
Jeff, if you look up the company that you're going with, they have many different brands. You brought in a good plan with the Cambria. I don't think some of those hotels that I seen on looking up their references meet the Cambria expectations of what you're thinking of a hotel right now.
Well, the Ascend brand is of equal quality of the Cambria. The company that we're dealing with, Lighthouse Hotel Group, actually has quite a bit more experience in hotel development than JCAP Real Estate did. So they've got a few decades of experience in this already.
I'm not saying there's not a lack of experience. I'm just saying some of them are not the Cambria brand that we're looking at for that property.
Correct, but the Ascend is of that equal quality, the one that we're looking at.
Okay.
It's more of a boutique style, and the quality level will not change at all.
Okay, the letter and I'm sure it's the same letter, Aaron, that you received, that I received today from a resident in that area. One of the concerns I have is we okayed a PUD on that site for this specific project. Now the project's gonna change, and I have a hard time approving something that I haven't seen a plan for. So that is my concern.
And I would agree, Mary. When this original proposal went through, it had a lot of back and forth. There was a lot of questions. There was a lot of controversy, if you want to put it that way. So I am concerned about a new project coming in and trying to meet all these same goals that we worked hard to meet with the Cambria. So I just can't see extending the PUD for this for a totally different hotel chain coming in.
I tend to agree with both Mary and Tracy. It's hard to, not to say this project can't continue, but to extend the PUD based on real generalities and nothing specific, it's putting us in a kind of putting our necks out there, exposing us a little bit, and it's just not right at this time, in my opinion.
I agree. I think the cleanest way to do it is let the one we worked on expire. They can apply for a new one. I mean, I know there's a cost to that. That's unfortunate, but I think the way it has to work as far as meeting the requirements we have set forth is that way.
Like you said, Kelly, it's cleaner. It's cleaner that way.
You know, I kind of have to agree with all of you. It's in my district. The first thing I want to do is make something happen in my district. But this one here, we went through a lot of work with the residents, the contractor, Mr. Beaver, to make that happen, and then it fell apart. I would have to agree with all of you, as I think let this thing expire. If he comes back with something different, he's gonna have to reapply and start all over, and hopefully not have the uproar of the community that we did have. We don't need that again.
Okay,
So I would make a motion to deny the extension of the PUD for the parcels listed on Oneida Street.
Second.
okay, we have a motion by trustee Flukie, a second by trustee Service to deny the extension request for the PUD on all the parcels on Oneida Street that are listed. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. 10F, consider discuss act on ordinance number 010-1-24, allowing for the permitted use of sheep or goats to clear invasive vegetation. Mr. Aaron.
All right, thank you. So again, this request came up through residents who were interested in using goats or sheep to clear buckthorn on the property, which is adjacent to the Fox River. Trustee Service supported the request, so therefore we brought it forward with proposed language that would again allow for the keeping of goats or sheep, again, to clear invasive vegetation. We did also learn during this process that they do also eat Phragmites, which Madam President was very excited to hear about. As indicated in the proposed ordinance, there are strict performance standards in place to maintain the health of the animals and minimize any disturbance to the neighborhood. At Plan Commission, they did have good discussion. They did recommend approval of the ordinance with the addition that a minimum of 180 days elapses between permits for the same parcel of land. So someone couldn't just continuously re-up their permit and maintain a continuous hosting of sheep or goats on their property. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, my initial reaction to this was, oh, I don't want goats in the village, but I understand that, yes, they do eat a lot of buckthorn, and then I found out that they love Phragmites also, so that made me very excited.
I'm excited about it because there's apparently something in their digestive system deactivates the seeds. So even though they're ingesting them and then they,
Get rid of them.
revisit the earth, they will not sprout.
Wow.
So it's remarkable.
Yes.
I mean, and I was gonna call Rex because with the clearing we have to do between the lake and the river to do the path in Ashwaubenon, you could have them there and people would probably come and see the goats.
Yeah.
It's like an attraction. There are parks I know in other cities like Madison or whatever that do that, and then like the little kids come and see the goats, especially near a waterway. It makes sense to me not to spray chemicals.
Yeah.
Just let the goats do their thing.
Yeah, I heard on the radio one morning when my alarm went off, and somebody was talking about these goats that eat all this stuff, and then she said when they get older, then they just go to freezer camp. I thought that was pretty funny. So anyway, okay, does anybody want to make?
My reaction was, we got chickens, now we got goats, what's next?
Only temporarily.
I realize the goats have a restricted use for it, but in that position, or that particular reason for having them, I think it's a good deal. It's been used in a number of areas, even locally it's been used, so. I will stop at the goats, though.
Okay,
I'll make a motion to approve the goats.
Second.
we have a motion by trustee Atkinson and a second by trustee Service.
Under discussion real quick, sorry, Mayor. Is there any requirement on the size of the parcel that can have the goats come? Because if you have just a standard residential lot, can someone have them come to their residential lot?
I think
Or is there a requirement, you know what I mean, at all?
So they do have to be penned.
Yes, oh, I know that,
Right,
yes.
yep, they're
Yes.
fenced. And really, each owner of the group of goats, I'm not sure, like gaggle of goats or what it might be, they basically size their herd based upon the size of the lot they need to clear.
Yeah.
So, it wouldn't be appropriate for me to dictate what that size would be when actually the vendor knows exactly what size herd they need for the particular lot.
So if I had my lot and I wanted them to come on my lot, he would fence that whole property, and there's no requirement of a size for the lot for them to go on. They would determine you need 2 goats or 3 goats or whatever the case may be.
Correct. The vendor makes that determination based upon the size of the lot.
Okay, and the adjacent property would have no say in whether you could have goats or not. So this will allow anyone to have goats on their property.
Right, by a permit process. So again, they do come and get a permit through our department.
Okay,
We're aware of it. We'll make sure that's properly maintained according to the performance standards in the code.
okay.
Tracy, are you trying to get away from cutting your grass?
I am, yes. I have for years, yes. I don't like being a grass farmer. Someone said that to me one time, you're a grass farmer. I'm like, that is the worst. So yes, okay, thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate it. I have seen goats used in parks before, and it's like Kelly said, people watch them. It's cool. I know some of the trails that we use, we see goats along the trails that are fenced in, and it works very well, and it's noticed, it's told whose goats they are, where the emergency number is, and all of that is listed, just like in the ordinance, so it does work, so.
They've been using goats on Renard Island for the better part of a year to almost 2 years now, and they've been sizing the herd up or down based on the volume material that they can go through. So originally the herd was too small, so then they increased the herd size. I think there were some issues with water levels in the bay, and one of the goats got out
Oh, no.
because they did not fence that particular project because it was an island.
Yep.
But there was enough shallowness within the bay that one goat decided that it wanted to go for a ride at Bay Beach. So it crossed the water and made its way over. So then they began penning them in locations on the island.
I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, and her husband own several 1,000-acre ranch down in Missouri, and they actually have bought goats to put on their ranch to eat all the vegetation so that they don't have as much maintenance down there. And she said it's remarkable what those goats eat and how they clean everything up. So I'm curious to see. Okay, we have a motion and a second for ordinance number 010-1-24, allowing for goats. Anybody else have discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried, thank you. Okay, 10G, consider, discuss, act on the village's 1941 fire truck. Rex.
All right, the village has come back into possession of our original 1941 fire truck, which was bought by the town of Ashwaubenon in 1942 by, I believe, True Anderson. And Barb did a great job over there. We've had a number of members from our historical society that are here today as well. And Barb is our fact finder on this particular issue. So I learned more. I'm guessing True Lane and Anderson Drive are named after True Anderson. Is that? I'm trying to put two and two together. Anyway, I digress. We now have a fire truck from 1941 back in our possession. This was given to the Historical Society. They were the conservators basically for a good 30 plus years of this fire truck. It has still been stored at the Village of Ashwaubenon Water Utility Building at Smith Park. But the Historical Society, working with a number of donors, has kept it basically running and in good shape and upgraded it to its current state. That being said, the Historical Society has moved into the old community center. Back when that move happened, there was a lot of discussion of what do we do with that fire truck. The initial thought was that it should be put on display. Unfortunately, the cost of putting an addition onto the community center is not within the ability of the Historical Society. You know, we're talking probably well over $300,000 at this point. And basically all the money that they're making or they're able to acquire is going towards their own building maintenance, the current building maintenance, as well as utilities. So I believe the Historical Society decided as a group, they took a vote, and based on the language in the contract that gave them the fire truck, if they were to ever decide they didn't want to keep the fire truck anymore, it would go back to village possession. Now in our possession. So that being said, the question that I'm posing is, what is the village board's wishes to do with the 1941 fire truck? There's a couple things to do. It still looks great because a lot of work was put into it. Mechanically, the engine still runs, and it runs fine. Our own mechanics have taken a look at it. It does need a new brake system, which is estimated to cost up to about $1,200. The pads and everything are fine. It's the brake lines that would need to be replaced. So does the village have a desire to keep the fire truck? If they do, we could either have our own mechanics replace the brake system to make it functional again to use as a public relations tool at special events that we may have throughout the year. There is some discussion that former village trustee Mark Williams would be able to find donors once again to do some repair work on the fire truck and relieve the village of the responsibility of the brake system cost. So that could be an option. Another option is, you know what, we just don't want the fire truck anymore. Rex, sell it, and we'd probably get maybe $2,000 for it, is what we're being told. So a minimal value. So historic value is basically higher than the actual value of the piece of equipment. There's a number of people that do drive it. We have been using or driving it to the Ashwaubenon Blast. That's when we learned this past summer that the brakes truly are no longer functional. Kind of had to do some rolling stops and some white knuckling to get it to Ashwaubenon and then back to the village garage. I've driven it in the past, not the last couple of years, but I've driven it before at a number of Ashwaubenon high school homecoming parades. So we've done that before, and it certainly, if it was fixed so that the brake system worked, we could certainly use it at other events, whether it be Touch a Truck or if Ashwaubenon Public Safety had some special events, where people could tour the station and things like that. So we could do that. So I'm going to put it back to you guys, and I'll try and answer any questions. Obviously, we have a number of people here from the Ashwaubenon Historical Society that are taking an interest in this an item of what the village ultimately would like to do. So I'll put it back on the board and take some direction.
Does it cost anything to store it? Can it stay where it is?
It can stay where it is at this point. I think ongoing maintenance, let's just say the brake system got fixed. You'd have probably a yearly cost of changing the oil, because oil does go, I want to say go bad, but you want to change that oil still, no matter how much or how little it's being driven. So you'd have minimal maintenance expense unless something else went bad on the truck. But at this point, it's not costing us anything to have it stored.
Well, I'm kind of a motor guy, a car guy. I like vintage things, including myself. I think it would be not fair to the village of Ashwaubenon to get rid of it. I think it's something we should keep. You're not going to replace it with anything like it because it's been around here since the time it was bought. I personally think we should invest the money. I wonder if it couldn't be pushed to the maintenance department here in the village, and that when they have some free time to look at it and fix it properly so it does operate properly, to be used frequently whenever it is wanted, and to be safe in doing it. I do have a problem on storage. I think it should be in an encaged glass room where it can be seen at all times of day and night.
I agree with you. Just like well trucking,
Pardon?
just like well trucking out
Well,
on GV.
Trucking has got an old Kenworth there that
First truck.
might have been the first tractor they bought, encaged in glass. You know, it's just another structure within the village that makes the village of Ashwaubenon unique. And yes, it's gonna cost us money, but I'll tell you what, we spent more foolish money than that.
Yep.
And I don't want to use spending the money foolishly. I know it's for good purposes, but for some unknown reasons. So my suggestion would be to get it fixed. If each trustee would spend $200 out of their pocket, I think the trustees alone could pay for it if money becomes an issue. And don't keep smiling at me, Brian. I think it should go to the garage when the men have free time to look at it, fix it properly, make it safe so that Rex can drive it again and feel safe. That would be my proposal. And then down the road, I'm looking at a glass structure. I know it ain't gonna happen. I know you people don't have tons of money to spend right now, but maybe you'll get lucky and find a big donor someday. Or fundraisers, whatever. But
Gary, I'm going to interrupt and just say I highly encourage anybody on the village board who would also like to learn how to drive the fire truck. So that it's not just Rex driving the fire truck.
I've driven older vehicles before.
Yeah.
So not having grown up in the era that it was originally manufactured in,
Well, I didn't say I was that old.
some time ago, I found out what the term double clutching.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't really know what double clutching means, and I always wondered, why is it shifting so bad?
Well, you see what you learned, Rex?
So yes, I'm sure there's a lot of great things to learn if someone would be interested in assisting with that.
Yeah.
I think we should pursue the gentleman who was maybe gonna get donations to get it fixed first. And then if that doesn't work out, you said something about a former trustee who maybe could fundraise for the fixing the brakes?
They're one and the same. They're one and the same person.
Oh, okay.
So it's former trustee Williams has gotten donations in the past to help fix it. Now, part of the thing is it was fixed to running condition, but not potentially the ultimate running condition that it should be. So,
in other words, it runs, but it don't stop.
Not good. I want to thank the Historical Society for the history information. It was very interesting. I didn't know all that about the truck, so thank you for putting that together. And Gary, I like your suggestion of having it somewhere where we can see it, where people can see it. And I was wondering, we're doing a study right now, or we're having a study done right now of our facilities, if we could add something like that to it, maybe talk to the contractor we're working with right now and say, we have this, what would be your suggestions? And maybe we can get it done a little earlier than we think.
So before you go on, I just want to I need to throw a wrinkle into the whole thing here. So if you're going to store it inside in a building, it probably needs to have all the fluids and gasoline drained unless that building is fully able to meet OSHA requirements, NFPA requirements, as Brian would say. So if it's under glass for display, then it really can't be, I should say, drivable. If you want it drivable where you can just go over there and pick it up, it can still be done where it's on display, but then you need to put it in a building that has the building exhaust and fire type systems for safety features that state and national code require. Just FYI.
So the crux of the question here is, do you want to keep it and we'll get all those wrinkles figured out? Or do you want to sell it? I don't think you can put a price on the historical value of it.
No.
That's my personal opinion, but what do you want?
$2,000, I'll buy it.
I'd split it with you, Gary. We can go drive around in it.
You and I'll go
Without
drive
brakes.
around,
Stop.
got a cooler and
Fine,
set
we'll
it
fix
on the
that.
back, away we go.
Okay, so does someone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
To keep the fire truck, get it fixed, and figure out where we're gonna store it so it's well preserved for years to come. That's something, and, you know, we're in this era of looking at our facilities and try and work that in somehow if possible.
Yeah, I would like to direct village staff
Okay,
to look into what it would take to build a glass case for it at this point in time.
Okay, so first of all, we have a motion, but we don't have a second.
Second,
Okay, we have a motion and a second to take the fire truck and get it fixed. Does everybody understand that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, now you would like to direct staff,
to look at what it would cost to get a glass case constructed.
but
to
then
store
we
that.
can't drive it.
You know, that's
I'd like to
the
look into
issue
that.
with all these fancy codes. It's a
Yeah, I'd
shame.
like to
I
look into
store
that.
my vehicles in the winter and I don't have all these problems that we got with this
Yeah.
fire truck storing it. But, you know, I don't believe it should be stored in that manner. If Rex says we got a graduation party or a homecoming or whatever, we sure don't want to keep putting the fluids in and then dumping them 20 minutes later.
Right.
I'd like to look into that building code
There's
as
got to
well.
be
Okay.
a way of.
So what, yeah, just so I understand directly, so we're still working with our contractor to do the space utilization study. In fact, I think it's this week or next week, we have another meeting, a core group meeting to kind of talk through that. They have done surveys, they have gone through our building, they've met with staff. I'm not certain that the conversation of the fire truck came up with them, however, it will after today's directive from the board. So I'll make sure that they're aware of that. There are a variety of options that we've discussed internally, whether, I think there was some conversation about, at one time, there was a thought that the Historical Society wanted to create kind of a glass garage or some kind of storage there. You know, is that a proper venue? We've talked about having it here at the fire station, if there was room for it here, so that when people come to the station for tours and things like that, it's kind of neat to have. But then still making it operable so that it can be utilized for parades and other shows and things like that. So we'll take all those things into account and then maybe come back with a variety of different options so that it's not a singular option that you have to pick from. So I think there's a variety of different components that could go into it, making it operable, not operable, having it with the Historical Society, having it here, having it somewhere else. We can come up with a variety of different options for the group to consider.
Okay.
I enjoyed the history of it, the folks here that put that together. I like my history. That was fascinating. What really fascinated me was it's still in service till 79. That was unbelievable, which got me thinking, to solve all this problem, why don't we just put it back in service? Solves a lot of issues.
Saves us over $1 million. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Historical Society, for coming out, and we'll get this figured out. Thank you. Okay, 10H, consider, discuss, act on changes to brush collection operations. Brian Rickert.
All right, so in front of you guys today is some changes to our current brush collection operations. Since I started here, we kind of had multiple different locations where we kind of spelled out what our guidelines were. Unfortunately, the 3 different locations that I reviewed, they all stated different information. So not very representative of our current operations. So with that, one of the attached documents kind of walks through our current guidelines, compiling all of them, and then some recommendations or changes that we're looking to potentially implement. I know one of the things that we're very interested in, we do provide this service continuously throughout the cycle of the year. So we canvass the entire village, driving the truck up and down every village street. So one of the things that I'm very interested in, or some of the things that I'm making a recommendation for, is to provide a self-reporting system. So ultimately, if you have brush at your home, you'd like to have it collected, you'd use a GIS based application in which you would report your home address as needing pickup. With that, we understand that some individuals don't have the technical abilities to do that, so we would offer that they could call into Village Hall here and we would get that reported. So what it would do is it would allow for us to much better pinpoint the locations, driving with a more systematic approach rather than just continually canvassing the village. Along with that, also looking at the volume that we're willing to collect. So our current ordinance is written that we actually are supposed to charge, if you have more than 1 cubic yard of material, we're supposed to be charging $100. Once you get up to between 9 and 16 cubic yards of material, we charge $200. Historically, that charge has never been actually charged to these residents. So it's a policy that's there, very outdated, not really followed. Looking to change what the maximum pile size is. That maximum pile size would get charged, or would get changed to 10 cubic yards, which is approximately the size of a small sedan or the size of one of our tandem axle dump trucks. If you have more than one load of material, generally it's excessive. A lot of times it's actually generated by a contractor. Say they had a large ash tree removal, something of that matter. Along with that, we did spell out maximum diameter size, maximum length. And speaking with our operators that generally operate that crew, it's not so much the diameter or the length. Actually, the longer limbs are actually a lot easier to chip because our chippers are self-feeding. So once you get that first end into it, it essentially self-feeds the brush right into it. So it's less labor intensive. With that, I was asked by some board members, just out of curiosity, as to how much this operation costs us annually. It's between $300,000 and $350,000 between wages and labor. So what we're doing is just trying to look how can we better provide this service to make sure that we're keeping ourselves efficient. With that, I don't have anything additional to include. If you have any questions, feel free.
Brian, you and I have talked about this sometime. You know, it's a shame to see these big vehicles running up and down the road, every street that we've got, every, whatever the period of time is. It's expensive running these vehicles. The men are actually riding around the village looking for it. I don't want to take away anything that we have, but we got to come up with a better way of not spending money the way we are and manpower to take care of brush pickup. Some people abuse it. I think I use the compost center quite a bit because I live close to it. So when the leaf truck comes by or the brush truck, very seldom do they ever stop at my house. But you ride around the village and you know darn well somebody cut a tree down, and like Brian said, it is more than what we should be picking up. It becomes costly, it becomes time consuming, and if it's a large amount, they should be paying something. We don't mind taking care of the minor things, but pulling a tree down is a different story. So I don't know what the real answer is, but it's got to be something of an on-call deal so that this equipment is not running around every street in the village and doing probably half the job that it was designed to do. So I think the on-call deal would be the way to do it, and then the monitoring the way it's picked up. If it's a big job, yeah, you're going to have to either pay us or call somebody to do it.
The one thing I would like to add is this was brought in front of our Public Works and Protection Committee, and they did have recommendations. The only difference that I had is when I presented it to them is potentially providing the service only every other month or quarterly. They did recommend that they would like to continue to provide this service continuously. I'm assuming that the self-reporting is occurring, so when the truck does go out, it has either a good full day's worth of work rather than just aimlessly driving through the village.
So this change then would be that we are going to actually start charging when people have large amounts that we have to pick up, and it would be every all the time, right? Every month, and it would be self-reporting.
Correct.
Okay, yeah, I think that'll save a ton of gas. I mean, we're literally driving up and down every street, every all the time.
Yeah, the cycle takes about 3 weeks, depending on the volume of material out, to drive throughout the entire village, but some of that time of that 3 weeks is spent just driving.
Driving, yeah.
You know,
I'm curious,
Excuse me for a second. One thing I forgot, talking with Brian, in the case of a storm or something of that nature where the village is packed with it, that would be taken care of on the routine that we're talking about. They'd run through the village on that deal.
Right.
But otherwise, it would be an on-call deal.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm curious with the self-reporting and then also charging for certain sizes, how is the resident gonna know at what point they're gonna get charged when they're self-reporting?
So we say that 10 cubic yards use a comparable as a mid-size sedan. Obviously, when in doubt, it's probably going to be too big. That's one thing that, if it is something that, if we gave approximate dimensions, 15 by 6 by 3, that's 10 cubic yards or a mid-size sedan. We're not, of course, going to be out there with a tape measure, but if you're, anywhere close to that 10 cubic yards, I would advise to, err on the side of caution.
My concern with this is I don't want to cut any I'm proud of what we do for service, is what you guys do. If we haven't been charging up to this point, and all of a sudden, say, just hypothetically, in the next calendar year, we've charged 200 residents, that just leaves doubt in my, you've ticked, well, you haven't ticked off all of them, but there's gonna be a big portion of them that I think are gonna go, what's going on here? Where they're cutting our, I just don't, the feel to me isn't right on this.
Right. The one thing that ultimately we're trying to get a handle on is, we've had some places that we've removed over 5 dump truck loads of material, a days and a half worth of work.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of just, is it equitable to the others that may not be using the service? Ultimately, we can go any route. I'm looking for direction from the elected board as to what our preference is. Maybe there's not a concern, and we'll just continue, collecting large volumes of material. We head out with the chipper truck. Sometimes we get large piles. We end up sending out a loader and additional dump trucks, and maybe that's what we want to stay in the service of doing, which is fine if that's what the desire is. I'm just looking for direction.
So here is part of the problem. We have people that are hiring contractors to cut down their trees, especially with all the dead ash trees. Those contractors know that Ashwaubenon picks the trees up. And part of their bid is to take the tree away. And so they're getting a lot of extra service from us, from the taxpayer. And like he said, I mean, when the next one is the bulk item. Between bulk item and brush collection, it's almost $1 million a year.
Isn't it in our ordinance that if you're a contractor, it has to be disposed of by the contractor?
Well, that's what it's supposed to.
So I think we need to be having Will police this a little bit then.
Right.
Because this sounds like it's a contractor problem, not a homeowner problem. And to be honest, I don't know that I'm comfortable with charging people for that. I'm going to use my house as an example. I have probably 25 ash trees in the Conservancy that are going to drop shortly. So that means I'll be paying to get rid of 25 ash trees at that point, because like you're saying, that it's going to be 2 pickups for you guys if I didn't want to get billed for it. And it's not just me, it's all through there. That's in a very neglected area, and I don't want it to look terrible when you're back there. So for me, I really don't know that I want to be charging residents for it, but I do think developing something on our website, or even better yet, down the road, an app that has buttons you can push that says, hey, I have a tree that's down, there's brush here, or I have a large item pickup. Putting it back on the homeowner to do that, I think would be great, so you guys aren't driving around wasting fuel and wear and tear on vehicles.
I think that we do so much more than any adjacent community, way well and beyond. And I think that's great, we've been able to do it, but it's a cost. And I was seeing myself, contractors take stuff down and leave it all at the curb. And we've probably picked it up. I think some of you guys have probably caught and said, we are not picking them up. I think having people self-report will limit some of that a little bit, because the contractor, they'll have to reach out and say, come pick this up. I frankly think it should be more limited, like Brian's recommendation, not every 4-week cycle. Do it 2-3 times a year that it's out there and we take it. And I think we should be charging for large amounts too. We need to get in line, and and I know it's a great service, I get that, but it's a lot of money that the village is putting into doing this, and I think we need to start charging for it, and we need to start controlling it a little bit more.
The one thing I would add is if we are aware that a contractor is doing it, either myself or Lee, our operations supervisor, we do stop out, we do talk with the contractor, try to get in touch with the resident. I wish we could catch it every time, because you can definitely seem as though there's times when it's likely a contractor, but sometimes it may just be a homeowner that is renting equipment and doing it for themselves. So we don't have time to, of course, police it the entire time, but, our garbage truck operators and guys are out and about. They try to bring it to our attention to keep a good handle on it, but there is definitely times when it does get missed, and it feels like we're doing the best we can, but
Just add some points to the kind of deliberation on this matter. So a couple things on the policy. So if the policy were to change and we take a more deliberate approach to charging for the service, I think it's within reason for us to say, okay, we have an individual that has, let's say, 2 mid-size sedan worth of brush at their curbside. At that point, we notice it, we provide information to that homeowner. Hey, are you aware that we begin charging for this? It takes us twice as long as what it would normally be allowed to, pick up that brush. So to some degree, we'll use some discretion and say, let's provide some information, some education to this homeowner that the amount of brush that they're bringing to the curb is excessive, and under normal policy considerations, there would be a charge for it. Now, let's say that homeowner does it again in 3 months, right? They've been provided adequate notice. We've done our due diligence. If the policy states that we charge for it, then we charge for it. What we're really looking at is there's these excessive amounts of brush that's being deposited at the curb. As Brian had mentioned, 5 truckloads, a day and a half worth of labor. Look at it from a fairness standpoint that the vast majority of homeowners, their property taxes are paying for that kind of routine, small amount of brush periodically, once or twice a year at best. Not, I'm clearing a full conservancy and bringing that brush to the curbside. If you have contractors, or if you utilize your own labor to remove that amount of material, it's a policy decision. Is that the taxpayer's burden to pay, regardless of how you remove it from your property, or should it be the individuals that accumulate that amount of material? Should they be responsible for it? That's really the question. If you're ultimately assigning the responsibility of all the taxpayers to pay for somebody else's large volume of brush material to be picked up and brought away. And should that be covered by the property tax? That's really kind of the bigger picture question that you're saying. Or if I'm a property owner that produces large volumes of material, should I be ultimately responsible to pay for that removal? Knowing that your property taxes cover a small portion, but when you exceed that amount, now the burden of that responsibility is upon that individual property owner. That's really what we're looking at. The smaller amounts are manageable, and we can use discretion as to how we educate and inform. It's really those bigger issues of, and we've had that. I think you can see on a number of streets where you have an entire terrace area that's filled, and we're there for a day and a half. And regardless if it's a contractor or not, is that the burden of that cost? Is it the person that produced that material, or the neighbor across the street that's paying the taxes to pay for that material? And so that's kind of the question you have to, what's that balance, right? Where is that balance between what the taxes should account for and what the individual should be responsible for based on their amount of production of material?
So go ahead.
So, thanks. I get that 100%. Maybe on my mind, it's not clear to me where that middle ground is. I get that huge, people are taking advantage of it. I get that. We got to try to mitigate that as much as possible. But on the other end of it, there's gonna be certain people that are, taxpayers, residents that are gonna get dinged on it. And I'm gonna get, some of those, there's gonna be a category in there, sliver in there somewhere, I don't know how big it'll be, where, you know, you get larger property owners, which I'm guessing their tax burden is larger as well. So they should get some of that service, you know, 2 or 3, if we're gonna talk about sedans. You know, why wouldn't they deserve that service compared to just one car load, one sedan load?
Yeah, I don't, and I'm not, I'm not trying to argue with you, Chris, directly, but I would, you know, make the argument of, well, then because I pay more in property taxes because the value of my property is greater than my neighbor's, do I have a better response time for EMS service because I pay more? Do I get better, you know, more frequent garbage pickup? You know, so I know what you're saying. I'm not, again, I'm not trying to argue with you, but I'm arguing with the premise of.
It's not an argument.
Yeah, you know, if you pay more. So I guess Brian is equating it to time. So yeah, we're talking today more specifically about volume, but what we're looking at is, okay, based on a certain set of volume, we average an X amount of time to take care of that volume.
Mm-hmm.
So is it reasonable for our crew of 2 to 3 people to be at a property for longer than 30 minutes? Is that reasonable on a weekly basis? Because I think we're doing it on the weekly. So every week, we could stop at every single property right now and pick up 30 minutes of brush. We don't, thankfully, because we would never be able to accommodate that. But what is that reasonable amount of time that we say, yeah, for 3 individuals and equipment, 30 minutes is adequate? Is it 60 minutes? When we go beyond that, what is that threshold where we say, yeah, that's a little too much time. That's excessive amount of labor force and equipment costs to provide that service for that individual property owner. And it would be really difficult to say, well, that house is bigger than this house, and right, we can't do that. We have to do it based on equity for each residential property owner. So that, I think that's kind of the basis, my understanding on the public works side is, what is that reasonable threshold for the amount of time we should spend at each residence on the weekly for brush pickup?
So my question is, under your proposed revised policy, the majority of people are not going to be charged. Just people who have more than the measured amount, correct?
That is correct.
Brian, do you have any idea what the cost savings would be? Have you thought of that at all by going to a different system, or is it just too hard to?
I don't really have the dynamics of like truly measurable amounts of what we have at each home now. So it'd be really hard to put an actual number on it. The good thing is once we do switch to self-reporting, you know, we will be able to start to collect if it is a certain house or, you know, who is actually using that service. I did an exercise very similar to this in the previous municipality I worked at, and you'll quickly find out that it is a very small percentage of people that actually use this service, which is, it's always interesting to see that information because it ultimately is being subsidized by everybody within the community. So.
Well, okay, then, using that, then we should just charge everybody for everything.
I don't think
that's for you guys to have.
Yeah, that's a policy question for you guys.
That's a policy question for you guys, and I'll be very honest, the previous municipality I worked at, we did go that route in the long term. I'm not saying we need to go there. That's not what I'm here for.
Yeah.
I think a good transition between right now where everybody's free and that where everybody pays is to do it like they're proposing. Say a reasonable amount is still free. If you have an excessive amount, you're going to get charged. And, you know, maybe they only put out half of their stuff each time then. I mean, there's going to be ways around getting charged too. But I'm going to move to approve the revised brush collection guidelines.
I'll second.
Does that include charging people?
For the excess of them, just like he's got it
Well,
proposed.
just like it's on, okay, all
So
right.
the majority is going to be free. It's just the abusers are going to get charged, is the way I read it.
And I was thinking about the same proposal, but the only thing I was thinking about, Chris's comment of the size of the pickup is give it a 1 year run that we are warning you people, we are going to do this after this 1 year. You're going to start charging after that 1 year. Warn them it's going to happen.
Or how about one time? One time you get to have your big pile down there and we'll tell them the next time it's this big, you get charged. It could be the next month. You know what I mean?
My only concern is charging people for them ash trees. I know there's a lot of them still left in the neighborhood in people's backyard, and you're gonna prevent people from cutting them down. They're gonna be falling onto neighbors' houses, and I just personally don't think there should be a charge for them. I really don't.
Well,
but I guess that what I would say to that, Chris, is how many residents actually take their own trees down?
Quite a few. I mean, this past weekend, there was 4 people on Saturday cutting a tree down, myself included.
I've had one in my neighborhood, except they weren't ash trees, they were maples or whatever they were. But he took them down himself.
You know, what Joel explained before is that if there was an excessive amount of stuff, that they would warn them and say, you know, this is a lot of tree, so we're going to next time be charging you. You know, we have such a limited crew in Public Works, and everything that gets done in Public Works, I mean, we have like 15 guys. They do everything, and we just don't have the manpower to be doing this. And then we do have the problem with the ash trees, all those ash trees coming down. And
Under the revised policy, how often could you put a pile out there? Every month? So you could do like 1 tree a month.
We don't have guidelines for that, but we could add something like that to it.
And it would get all picked up. You just can't have it all at one time.
Well, and the other thing is, you know, you have the ash problem now, but the spruces are getting hit. We took a huge one out of our backyard last weekend that we had to remove and put out front. So those are getting hit. Well, then all of a sudden the maples, I mean, there's too many bugs and too many things out there taking out trees, unfortunately. So it's unfortunate that all the ashes are there and people have to deal with them, but where do you stop with the infestation from other types of bugs and that are taking out trees? 'Cause there's a lot of them.
Yeah, and just as a reminder, I think the board is aware of this. Our code currently requires a charge for collection of that material. We just haven't issued the invoices.
Yep.
So under the previous, or the current policy, the minimum charge is $100, and that's for any cubic yard amount. So we have not charged, even though our ordinance has stated, so previous boards have stated that there should be a charge, and for whatever reason, I'm not sure why, or the history behind it, we have not issued any charges, even for 1 cubic yard. You have 1 to 8 cubic yards, and then the next tier is 9 to 16 cubic yards at $200. So what we're looking at is having no charge for anything less than 10 cubic yards, correct?
Correct.
So we're gonna codify the ordinance to say that there is no charge. Where the charge would come into effect is when we're dealing with 10 cubic yards of material. And I'm thinking, Brian, is that an hour of time per location or less than an hour of time per location?
It all depends on how the material is there, but I would say about an hour is about adequate.
If they're stacking it and bringing it to the curb appropriately, 30 to 60 minutes of time. And so that is kind of what we're shooting for. So again, it's going to be based on volume, not necessarily time, but the idea is if it's brought to the curb appropriately, it could be anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes of our laborers' time to process that material at the curbside.
You know, the village goes through the expense of handing out books, what is it, Rex, 3-4 times a year with the activities and things to do within the village. One of them is how is the proper way to put brush on a curb.
Yep.
You just don't throw it on a pile and expect the public service here to spend 2 hours trying to untangle this mess. Yep. If it's packed properly, it's simple. Half hour, they're out of there. You know, we do a good job in educating people, but we got to do a better job on educating them to read the books.
Yep.
You know, the rules and regulations we've got.
So, you know, it is a decent sized pile that would be produced at 10 cubic yards. That's quite a bit of material. The vast majority of them are going to fall underneath that.
Correct.
In talking with Brian before the meeting and staff, I think the last thing we want to do is get into a situation where we're setting up invoicing and billing and trying to track this down from residents too. So the vast majority of people are going to fall outside of the charge window. It's the ones that are being a little bit more deliberate with a significant amount of tree felling on their property that's going to produce that kind of material.
Joel, did you say 10 cubic yards?
10 cubic yards is the beginning baseline. So anything 11 cubic yards or greater, you would have a $200 charge, which is consistent with your current ordinance.
Boy,
And then we would also add a larger charge for 21 to 30 cubic yards to $500. That's a lot of material.
I think 10 is too great already. That's a small-sized dump truck.
It's one tandem axle dump truck.
Yeah, it's a one tandem dump truck.
It's a lot of material.
That's a lot of stuff.
Yep.
Yep.
That's a lot of truck.
Yeah, we've unfortunately had some corner lots that we've hauled away. One, we had 11 loads of material we hauled away. One, it was 7. It was impressive how they had it stacked, and they were on a corner lot, so they were able to use every bit of real estate. Stacked in some locations taller than the guys could even reach. We had to get a loader in there to knock it down, and unfortunately they used a skid loader with a grapple bucket, which then crushed it into essentially piles of knotted spaghetti.
Nice.
That's above and beyond what we should be doing.
Okay.
Just one more, just because for some reason I'm just not grasping the size of this thing, the sizes that we're
Small
talking
dump
about.
truck.
Is this, when you're talking about cubic feet, are you talking about, how do I want to say this, post chipping? Or are you talking about?
Pre-chipping.
Yeah.
Pre-chipping. So, yeah, cubic yards. So it's 10. If I've been saying cubic feet, I meant to say cubic yards. So it's 10 cubic yards, and that's pre-chipping. That's when we arrive curbside. How big is that pile?
Okay.
Because for us to quantify after it's chipped, that would be very challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a small dump truck, and that's a lot of material.
It's a lot of material.
Yeah. And there would be no charge, which right now we're supposed to be charging $100.
Correct.
So,
Yeah, the one thing I would add is we do chip everything curbside unless it is a large pile. You know, if it merits us bringing out a front end loader with a grapple, sometimes we do use our tractor backhoe. If they are these enormous piles, we actually shift our type of operation to, rather than processing it curbside or chipping it curbside, we literally just pick it up, haul it out to our yard waste facility, and then it gets processed by a commercial processor, because our chipper is only able to produce material up to 12 inches. Anything greater than that, we either split it for firewood that does get sold back, or we use it, or we have a commercial vendor come in and process it.
and then we have to pay the commercial vendor to get rid of it
We do.
that we took
Yep.
for free.
We contract that out. It's anywhere between $7,000 and $14,000 annually.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the question. We have a motion and a second to approve the brush collection changes.
And that's the guidelines on effective 1/1/25 that we're talking about, correct?
Correct. Yeah, the reason that's 1/1/25 is to allow for an educational
Right.
time period.
Okay, does everybody understand?
Okay.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
Okay, we have one no.
I would just like to add, my gut told me to vote no, but the other side of me said, you know, we got a great staff here, and you know, I always trust what, you know, I can tell the work you guys have done on this, and you think things through the right way, and I just got to trust what you're going with here.
Okay. Okay, 10I, consider, discuss, act on changes to bulk large item collection operation. Brian Rickert.
All right, so this is kind of the other big time-consuming thing that we do here in the village. So we do rubbish pickup. It is monthly. It is generally the third full week of the month. Along with that, we currently really don't. We have guidelines in place. We had guidelines that really are spelt out different ways in different locations. kind of want to add some items to it. So currently, we'll pick up appliances as long as they do not create or have any sort of freon in them. But ultimately, I think this was originally put in place for a large item, you know, couches, mattresses, stuff like that. Unfortunately, it's gotten to the point where we're seeing it where people are moving outside of apartments, moving outside of duplexes, or maybe just a general move. And they literally are throwing out an entire home contents curbside. Unfortunately, sometimes the stuff isn't bagged. I know Will does a very good job of bringing that stuff to our attention and helping us get things the way they are. But we've had it before where we got piles of shoes, piles of clothes. We're out there literally picking up people's piles of clothes, piles of shoes. Someone's shed, you know, someone will pull a shed from their backyard to the front yard, and we're out there crushing a shed, and or we'll get a 12 by 12 deck that someone sawed off from the side of their home, sawed off from the footings, and ultimately we're out there with chainsaws cleaning it up. It's a very time-consuming effort. With that, we generally, it takes us, you know, about that entire week, because it is a week. The challenging thing that it creates from us from an operational standpoint is currently it falls on your garbage day that you are able to put out your rubbish. So we'll send guys out, we'll send a crew out, and sometimes it takes 3 hours, sometimes it takes 7 hours, sometimes it takes the entire working day. We ultimately then fund work activities for those individuals to do, but it definitely is inefficient. Say our crew is generally doing concrete work. At that point in time, you know, of course, you can't call at, you know, 10 o'clock and say I need concrete for 1 o'clock. It just doesn't work like that in the current industry. Or if you're out, say you're tarring cracks, unfortunately our tar kettle doesn't heat up in 30 minutes. So from an operational standpoint, it's very clunky in the winter. We generally have 3 to 4 plow trucks that we have to disassemble and reassemble with their front plow and their salt spreader. That's about a day's worth of work, just assembling and disassembling these trucks for this type of operation. So with that, looking to provide some more, I guess we'll say, rules and regulations. Looking at that again, 10 cubic yards, which Aaron was able to help me. It's about 10 large refrigerators. That's about the size of the material or the size you could have. Not allowing for multifamily residents because generally they do have commercial pickup at their location. Recyclable items would not be accepted. That's just mainly following state statutes. If you do have recycling, it should be recycled. You can take any excess of recycling material directly to the Port and Resource Recovery Center, which is on Broadway. They do have a drop location there. I am recommending that essentially all waste would get put curbside Monday morning. We would essentially start up our operations Monday morning and start canvassing the entire village. Using, again, a self-reporting system. So we're going directly to locations where it's needed. Looking to change it to only a few times per year. No full-length basketball poles. The reason for that is we can't take those to the transfer station or the landfill. They don't accept them, so what we end up having to do is cut them with a chop saw, along with any large wood beams or anything like that, because it does not work well in their trash compactor. So with that, ultimately looking to make some changes to hopefully kind of create some efficiencies within our operations. I did look at multiple other municipalities. There is, you know, De Pere only does it 2 times a year. Some municipalities don't do it at all, or if they do it, they charge per item. Bellevue, for example, every item they pick up, it's $50. So it's very, very costly for the residents to do it. Green Bay does it 4 times a year. Yeah, other than that, open it up for any sort of comments, discussion.
Brian, I don't think there's much discussion on this. This is very reasonable for just a few of the reasons of other communities and what they do. So if there's no other questions, I move to approve your Public Works large item collection guide.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion by trustee Paul, second by trustee Flukie to accept the changes to the bulk item collection operations. Now, my one question on this, so this will only be 1 week a month or every other month?
So it's the way that the policy is written, and we can definitely change it, we only have it proposed, 4 times a year. So
Times a year.
Okay.
April, June, August, and October.
Okay,
The reason for that is the months outside of that is our trucks are set up for winter operations.
Right.
So ultimately, I would say that should be their primary priority in the winter because it is a big safety component. The other challenge is unfortunately when it does snow, this stuff gets buried in snow and we literally sometimes have to send out a tractor backhoe to dig the stuff out of the snowbanks before we pick it up.
right,
It's,
right.
it's very clunky, and it even gets more frustrating when we see people, they'll pull into their driveway with a pickup truck and start unloading drywall, which I would like to think it's coming from Ashwaubenon, but it could be coming from anywhere.
Well, we see that. I personally see it where people from other parts of the village, or community, I should say, drop it off here in the village of Ashwaubenon because they know their mother's house is going to get picked up with large items it was a mattress, I know. Another, I don't even want to get into this other one, but we know it all came from another area because Ashwaubenon is the nicest village in the community of Brown County to pick up these items.
The only
There's
comment I
water
have,
dripping, Brian. I just want to bring it to your attention.
I'm gonna say, what the hell's going on here, Chris? Huh? Right above your chair.
It's concerning considering it's not raining.
So that must have
And
been.
it's not even raining out.
the only comment I have on this, I see it, we listed here as 3 to 4 times a year, and then you list out the months. I just want to make sure our residents know exactly what months we're picking up, because even a few times it's changed, our current policy, it's
Correct.
changed on a week or two, I don't remember, because of maybe holidays or something, that people notice that.
Right.
And I would just like us to be specific.
Well, that's the reason we're going
Sarah.
through this now, because Brian wants to get this, we get a yearly calendar.
Yeah.
And then it'll be published in there, so. And it can be published in the water bill too.
I will add just a word of caution. Obviously, we had a lengthy conversation on brush. Generally speaking, that's not necessarily a change in service. This is a change in service. So just so you're aware of that you're going from monthly pickup
Right.
once a week or 1 week out of each month to 4 times a year. So even though there was a lot of robust conversation on the brush end of things, this will be an item that will likely elicit some resident concern because you are reducing service.
What if we did every month except the winter months
That's what's gonna be
as
my
a transition?
suggestion.
I'm open to anything. It was just a recommendation, just comparing to some other municipalities. So
So April through October, every month.
What about October with leaf pickup?
October gets challenging with leaf
Yeah,
pickup.
I say,
yes,
because
it
you
does.
have all your trucks probably changed over for leaf pickup.
Yep, the good thing is we have repurposed some of our old garbage trucks to have the ability to be leaf vac trucks. So with that, the good thing is they are 2 separate trucks now, but it is the same staff crew. So
Because I would be able to, if I had a constituent contact me upset about this, it'd be easy to explain that in the winter, it's complicated to pick up big things because of snowfall in the first place, and in the second place, the trucks are converted. There you go. I don't think that's
I would agree.
unreasonable.
I think if we just follow the current parking ban dates, it would be nice and clean and easy to remember.
Here, throw some paper in there, that might, just. I made more.
So Mary, the motion right now is for what's existing, correct?
Cor-
Or
what-
Gary
what
and
is- Right, what is on the guidelines, but if we want to change it to the, say, April through September and not in the winter or October,
I would call the question unless there's any other discussion.
What type of cost savings do you guys figure you're gonna see with having it self-reporting? Instead of driving around every day with vehicles, I mean, I understand like we're trying to cut our budgets. I mean, but the idle time on the vehicles has to be astronomical, because I drive around all the time and I watch every Ashwaubenon vehicle sitting idle, and I know how expensive that is. So, like, just by working through the not driving around portion has to be pretty significant.
I'll be honest, I didn't quantify that. So I did quantify our current operations. Our current operations are about $400,000 annually. It's hard to say. It really is. I mean, half, I would say, I don't think you're gonna cut the price in half, no. But I think getting a good handle on who is using that service, just in case we do have, say, a repeat offender that's hauling material or maybe running a demolition company, to try to get a better handle on that.
Yeah. I like the idea of eliminating it during winter months, just because there's no point in you guys digging it out of snowbanks. But I would still like to see it monthly.
Okay, so
Gary, can you amend your motion, or do we need to deny that one?
I don't really know if I want to amend it.
Oh, okay.
well,
I agree. My second would stay with what Gary had.
Okay, so,
All right.
well, so the original motion was that we accept the large item collection guidelines. The discussion now has just been, do we want to go from 4 times a year to possibly having every month from April through September, April through September, like we normally do every month. So I don't know if the original motion maker wants to change it. Otherwise, we can vote on that one if people want to,
So you're doing it 7 months then?
Yep. So we'd be doing it 7 times a year.
And it would
Where's the
be,
money savings then?
hopefully in the self-reporting.
Yeah,
Hopefully in the
it's
self-reporting and you're not driving around.
Well, it's self-supporting.
self-reporting.
Yeah, all right, as long as it's self-supporting, I'll amend my motion, but continue with the self-reporting. I can go with that. That's the understanding the most times of the year people would be cleaning things out.
So do you want to amend your
Extend
motion
my arm in this one.
to say, accept the changes in the large item pickup? The only difference that you would change is that it would be from April through September instead of 4 times a year. Is that what you're saying?
That's what they're saying.
Okay, so Gary was the motion on that, and the second was,
We
Was
need
me,
an
and I won't
umbrella
second
over
it then.
here.
huh?
I will not second it with that
Okay.
change.
I will second it.
Okay, so Chris Atkinson would be the seconder on that motion. The amended motion, right? Okay, everybody understand that?
Not really.
So just for aiding Marcus, we had an original motion with a second by Gary and Tracy. Gary has amended his motion to reflect what was stated.
Correct.
Which we'll get in the minutes. Tracy has withdrawn her second to the amended motion.
Correct.
Thereby Chris Atkinson has seconded the amended motion. So
Got that?
I'm stating that for the record because they're recording this.
Yes.
Because we'll go back
Yes.
to the recording and
Yes.
get it off of their act.
Okay. Does everybody understand that?
Yeah.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No,
Okay, we have 1 no. Okay. We're done with that. Okay, 10J, consider, discuss, act on changes to village medical, dental, vision insurance plan for 2025. Joel?
Okay, thank you, Madam President. In your packet is a group of information that we received from Brown & Brown, who is our health and medical plan advisor for the village of Ashwaubenon. They assist us in determining plan design for medical, dental, and vision benefits, as well as forecasting costs and expenditures. If you're not aware, we are a fully self-funded health insurance program. So the budgeted dollars that we allocate every year from the village's general fund and the utility enterprise accounts funds the total expenditures for health insurance costs for all of our employees, including the A-plus clinic that we house here at Village Hall and at the high school. So again, the packet includes an attachment that gives you a full set of information on plan performance for year-to-date 2024. So that takes us to September. As noted in my cover memo, we were awaiting some final information to which we got yesterday regarding what is called stop-loss insurance. So even though we are fully self-funded, we do purchase some insurance called stop-loss insurance to protect the village and the health plan from high-cost claimants that would exceed a certain threshold. And so what that means is if we have a claimant that has some type of catastrophic condition or a chronic condition that costs in excess of $75,000, and it reaches certain aggregate specific, I'm not going to get into too much details, but it adds another $2,500 to it. What that does is it kicks in stop-loss insurance, and so we get reimbursed from that insurance for costs that exceed the $75,000. So an individual plan member that has cancer or some type of major chronic condition that requires a prescription drug. Prescription drugs can be pretty costly as well. That may kick us into stop-loss. We have to get that number. That stop-loss insurance is a fixed cost to the village, and it gets incorporated into the premium equivalent that we'll discuss briefly here in a moment.
Joel, is that just a supplement insurance that you're talking above and beyond ours?
No, I wouldn't even call it that. I would just call it, it's kind of like insurance for your insurance. So it's not necessarily a gap insurance like a Geico or anything like that. It's specific to our plan. It's for the village. It doesn't, our plan participants don't even know that it's there. So it just kind of works behind the scenes. They go through and they see their providers, they get the care that they need. Insurance applies based on our plan design as far as deductibles, co-pays, out-of-pocket maxes. All it means is once that particular claimant reaches a certain threshold in cost, the village gets reimbursed for that expense. So we're insuring ourselves from having a claimant that could have $500,000 worth of claims because of some type of catastrophic loss or chronic condition, okay? So as referenced in the memo, originally before we got our stop-loss insurance numbers, we were looking at a premium equivalent increase of up to 15.8% for medical, and we are proposing a 3% increase for dental. There would be no changes on the vision program. As referenced in the memo as well, we are not proposing any plan design changes from last year. And that's resulting in the fact that we had a pretty substantial increase in the overall premium equivalent. In addition to that, last year we did have some substantial plan design changes. So to kind of soften the transition, if you will, for our employees, we are recommending not making any substantial plan design changes. Last year we increased the overall deductibles for individual and family plans, as well as increase the overall percentage of equivalency each employee has towards our health plan. With our stop-loss numbers, and I probably should have done this before, so in your packet you have kind of the proposed numbers that show or reflect the 15.8% increase, and that's that full packet, and it would be found on page... we're getting to page 10 in the attached document that shows the premium equivalent with the employer contribution. We received updated numbers yesterday, as I had mentioned, and that number is going from 15.8% to what we're recommending at 11.9%. So we were able to acquire some savings in negotiating our stop-loss insurance program with the vendor, and that's going to reduce that overall cost by just over 4%. And I am attempting to join the session, which I must have X'd out of, so you can see those numbers. All told, I think the original memo that I had presented to the board is the overall cost increase to the budget was around 200. I've got echo now. 291,334, and the overall cost now with that reduction in stop-loss insurance to the village is 230,325. So it's roughly a $60,000 savings on that end. So let me pull this up so you can see it, and I can explain it just slightly better. Window, here we go. Okay, so here's the screen. I'll try to show it on a little bit bigger screen. So there's two tables here. On the top, you have what's called the $75,000 specific stop loss. And on the bottom, you have the $85,000 specific stop loss. On the left-hand side of both columns is our current premium equivalence. On the right-hand side is the proposed equivalence. This page would theoretically replace page 10 in your packet, so this gives you that updated information. Staff is recommending moving from a $75,000 specific stop loss to an $85,000. And what that means is, Gary's got an umbrella. What that means is instead of hitting $75,000, in lieu of hitting $75,000 before stop loss kicks in, now an individual claimant would have to hit $85,000. So there is some fixed cost increase or variable cost increase to the village with that potential, because now we have $10,000 of additional coverage that we have to meet before our stop loss kicks in. But based on trend lines, what we've seen over the past few years, we typically have between 3 to 5 claimants on our plan that get close to that $75,000 threshold. At current, we have 2. For the last couple of years, we've had 2. And so those other 3 potential claimants usually results in about $10,000 each. So it's about a $30,000 variable risk on the trend for the village. We're realizing $30,000 in savings on the fixed costs, though. So it's kind of, if the anticipated variable expense stays the same and the proposed fixed expense stays the same, it's a net neutral affair to the village. So we would rather take the variable, because if we do realize the savings, we will get up to $30,000 in savings. If we have the latter, where we have more cost claimants, we are still capped at that $85,000 specific, and there will not be any increases in our variable expense. Long explanation, probably more than what you wanted to hear. But at the end of the day, it is a savings based on, we anticipate those variable expenses, we know the fixed expense, and we're looking at about 11.9% premium increase from last year with no other design changes. So we're seeking board approval for that. Open enrollment would begin on November 1st, which is typical for each year. Employees would have a couple weeks to enroll, and then the plan and design changes, the plan would go into effect January 1. So with that, I'll answer any questions that you may have.
So in other words, Joel, this is the best you can do on this?
I think so. There are a couple other options. I don't want to get into too much detail, but there are some things called lasers. And what that means is it basically pinpoints specific claimants on the stop loss. So you can reduce your overall fixed cost on the premium of the stop loss, but then you have this thing called a laser. So as an example, let's say you have a claimant that's on a high cost prescription drug. It's a chronic condition, so they will be on this drug forever. And they will laser it so that that particular claimant does not have an $85,000 specific loss. They have a $200,000 specific loss. So now your plan has to cover that $200,000 before stop loss will kick in for that person. Your premiums are reduced, but the variable expense is much greater. The risk is higher. So we are not recommending that. It could, in theory, if all things work out well, lower your overall costs, but we know who these plan participants are, we know their conditions, and we know that, you'd be taking a substantial risk of lasering these individuals, knowing their conditions and the likelihood that they will remain on our plan.
So in other words, it's the best plan for the employees that you see right now with their conditions they have.
Correct.
All right, I'll move to approve the maintenance, to maintain the 2025 employee medic dash RX premium contribution at 7.5%, including 2.5% premium contributes deduction if the health plan participation completes the wellness requirements.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by trustee Paul, a second by trustee Atkinson to approve the 2025 employee medical premium contribution and everything stated at the recommendation paragraph. Okay, does anybody have any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed. Thank you. 10K, consider, discuss, act on the 2025 Bellin Onsite Service Agreement. Joel?
I get it.
Oh, I'm sorry, Patrick.
That's okay.
I didn't look at it.
No, that's all right. Every year, the Bellin Onsite Services Agreement, the A+ Clinic and the providers there, they have to notify the village within 60 days of the renewal if there's any increased costs. There unfortunately is some moderate increased costs to the providers, just based on medical costs and trends in the market, things like that. It's not too significant, but with all the providers that the A+ Clinic gives to us and the good services they provide, there's a cost, I believe, if I calculated, around $2,300. This was budgeted for, and based on how well they work with the village, that staff does recommend approval of the contract and the increased costs. So if there is a motion to be made for approval, staff would just recommend approval of the 2025 Bellin Onsite Services Agreement.
Motion to approve the recommended 2025 Bellin Onsite Service Agreement.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by trustee Flukie, second by trustee Zerbal, to approve the 2025 Bellin On-Site Service Agreement. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. 10L, consider, discuss, act on contract award for Argonne Park Boardwalk installation. Rex.
All right. Bids are opened for the main trail and option A, an extension in the Argonne Park for Boardwalk. As you know, the woods behind Cabela's is all wetland, so it needs to be a boardwalk that goes through there were we to extend the trail. So low bidder for the main part of the trail is going to be Custom Manufacturing. Custom Manufacturing came in at $114,600. They are the same manufacturer that put the boardwalk in a couple of years ago over at Sherwood Forest Park. Park Board and staff recommend accepting that bid. We're very happy with that work. Option 2 was to extend the trail even farther north towards Cabela's into the woods. That option came in at, I believe, 91. What are we at? 91,900. The challenge with this isn't the actual boardwalk cost, but there's also going to be future costs involved with cutting the trees down to put the boardwalk in. At this point, we're probably looking at around $75,000 to $100,000 for the trees. And again, it has to be done in the wintertime. It has to be done with certain material that, because it's a wetland, they can't rut it up. Same thing that happened over in Sherwood Forest. So while the Park Board recommended both options to be approved, the second option would only be approved if additional funding were available. The tree cut down funding would come from the EAB bonding that the village would be doing. So I guess at the current time, staff recommendation at this point is to approve both options, but only move forward with option A at this time till we find out exactly what funds are left from our funding source.
Be done before the draft, Rex?
Not the trail.
Boardwalk would be?
It would not be, no.
All right, I'll move to approve the two proposals, one proposal you want approved, right, for the trail?
Well, both will be approved, but the second option only be moved on by staff were funds to be available, which is yet to be determined.
All right.
We can bring the whole thing back. It's up to you guys how you want to do it.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve both at this time with the option on the second one that you're talking about.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by trustee Paul, a second by trustee Service to move forward with the recommendation on the bid project of $114,600 and to approve but wait on the second option if funds are available. Okay, Tracy.
Okay, under discussion, my broken record statement again. This project is going on Packer's property. We need to get a contract, we need to get some written agreement with them before we do this. They could come in and say, we do all this work, we spend $114,000 on it, and they say we don't want it there, take it out. We would never do that on any other private property. So please let me know that we have an agreement, a written agreement with the Packers.
I talked last week, Monday, with Mark Murphy and Aaron Popke about the easement for this trail, and it's in the process.
Okay, so Patrick had talked at Park Board that we will not award this bid or until we have everything in place, is that correct?
It's conditioned on having an easement in place.
And having an agreement with the Packers in place?
Yes. So I spoke with Aaron Popke as well. It is approved. And then I spoke with their attorneys actually today, so via email. But that said, there's no objection to it, and I have it drafted already. It's ready to go.
Okay, then if you would want an amendment, Gary, I think you had the vote, that it's contingent on having all the documentation from the Packers in place.
It's fine if it's in progress. I don't have a problem with that.
So did you
Thank
want to amend your motion, Gary? Or do we not need the
The bid is
motion?
already inherently on a contingent on having the proper property approvals in place to allow
Okay.
us to do this work.
So we don't need that then?
Okay, so by its nature and the fact that we've approved this bid, it would be required to have everything in place before it would be awarded?
Correct.
Is what you're telling me?
Yes. For the the contract agreements with the awardee, so to speak, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So everybody, we have a motion and a second on the item, $114,600. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. 10M, consider, discuss, act on resolution number R10-4-24, approving the Village of Ashwaubenon to enact a right-of-way moratorium. Brian Rickert.
Yeah, so this is something that's probably very new to you guys. So what a right-of-way moratorium is essentially what it does. Currently, how we're set up, if a contractor wants to do work within the village right-of-way, we do require them to get a right-of-way permit. So that right-of-way permit allows, say, WPS or a TDS to do work within our right-of-way to install their facility. What this right-of-way moratorium does is it allows us to withhold permits. We're proposing to withhold permits from November 1st to May 1st. Reason for that is with with the NFL draft coming to the Village of Ashwaubenon, we want to be sure that we have our right-of-ways in good condition, make sure that they're restored, make sure we don't have holes in pavement, sidewalk panels removed, areas that are not restored. I looked at previous municipalities that recently hosted the NFL draft, Kansas City and Detroit. Did get this, we'll say, idea from them, just based on the fact we want to make sure that we're keeping our right-of-ways in the best condition possible. There is a certain parameter where we are looking to put this in place. Western boundary would be Interstate 41, northern boundary would be Lombardi, east boundary would be Ashland Ave, south boundary would be 172. We were hoping to have a little bit more of a staged or a phased approach with this moratorium, being as though as we have limited information from the NFL as to exactly where the traffic's going to be, where things are going to flow in regards to the NFL draft. We do just kind of have a blanket area at this time. It is something that we could look to revisit if we do feel as though as this is creating too much of a burden on the utilities. We did reach out to the utilities about 3 to 3.5 weeks ago, making the utilities aware that we are putting this in place. We only did receive feedback from one utility, that was AT&T, and their concern was, what if we need to install infrastructure strictly in regards to something that's needed for the NFL draft? There is a clause in the resolution that does allow my jurisdiction or my designee to consider it on a case-by-case scenario if it is something that is desired to be needed for the NFL draft.
What about like an emergency situation, Brian, that something comes up, I would assume that would be handled the same way then?
Yeah, emergency situations, generally an after-the-fact permit's called. They do submit for an after-the-fact permit. Say there is, some sort of a gas line leak. We're not telling WPS, wait before you repair the gas line leak until you have a permit. Most companies, they go forward, they perform the repair because it is indeed an emergency, and we take care of it after the fact. So the caveat with, you know, me having, or my designee having the jurisdiction of being able to look at a case-by-case scenario, emergency would be another one of those, or pre-approved village projects where, say we need to get a utility to a building that's currently being built. We're not gonna withhold, you know, getting a building sewer or water only due to the fact that we do have this in place. But say it is a large gas line replacement that WPS has been planning for the last 7 years, can they wait another 6 months? Just looking at it on a case-by-case scenario, to be sure that we're keeping things. We'd hate for it to be, TDS did wrap up majority of their work for this year with the exception of some punch list items. We'd want to, you know, try to limit an activity like that where it's so intrusive, disturbing a lot of our right-of-ways.
Okay,
Yeah, I'd make a motion to approve resolution number R10-4-24.
Second.
okay, we have a motion by trustee Flukie, a second by trustee Service to recommend approval of resolution 10-4-2024. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. If you have any items for next agenda, please give the office a call.
Mary,
Closed
can I
session.
give one quick, I'm sorry. Can we put on the agenda to discuss the implementation or to start looking at our nuisance ordinance and ask staff to continue or start working on that
Okay,
at our next agenda?
okay. I would also, before we go and read the closed session item, I'd like to thank everybody for coming in at noon for this meeting, because this will get me to my meeting tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock in Madison. Okay, number 12, during the meeting, the village board of the Village of Ashwaubenon may convene into closed session pursuant to item number 1 as listed in item 12. I need a motion to go into closed session.
Motion to go into closed session?
Second.
Motion by trustee Atkinson, seconded by trustee Flukie to go into closed session. Roll call, please.
So what animal are you gonna?
You have to do roll call, yes.
What's going on here, big guy?
President Kradowski,
Yes.
Trustee Service,
Yes.
Trustee Paul,
Gary, say,
Gary
Gary,
Paul,
Gary, say yes.
say yes.
Say yes.
Trustee Zerbal,
Yes.
Trustee Atkinson,
I got a
absent Mr. Krieger, Trustee Flukie.
Yes.
We're in closed session.